Hi, Editing Julia here. This video was very rough to make, and I really did try my best. I filmed it quite a few times, and this was definitely like my first video with a lot of learning curves. But don't fret, it's a very small micro channel still, and I'm still learning every day. The video is going to be extremely echoey. I'm sorry about that. I do have a microphone, but I didn't properly set it up this time, but I will know better for next time, so it's going to be extremely echoey. But yeah, I just want to say I appreciate anyone who's still sticking around this channel to see what it could become, and my videos of course will be a lot more cleaner, a lot more better the more I go forward. But yeah, I just wanted to say, sorry for the quality if it's not, the best. I did try, and even this time it felt like it wasn't enough. So hopefully you enjoy it, and yeah, I'll see you for the next video as well. And girl, you could see the struggle and pain and distress in my eyes. It was a very long week, and especially yesterday when I was filming it, it was a long day. So, hopefully it's, hopefully it's watchable from your guys' POV. Y'all, this is the 5th time I am recording this film. I am losing my mind right now. I cannot take it anymore. It's been so much devastation and heartbreak every time I input that USB into my laptop and something happens. So this is the 5th time I am doing this, okay? Hello. Thank you for joining me on this long journey. I apologize I have not posted anything in the past couple weeks. I have been working on this project for the time being. I'm very excited and passionate about this topic that I'm going to talk about today. I've been looking forward to it, but there have been so many more trial and errors than I expected. For this week's video, I'm going to discuss The Prince of Egypt from 1998 and Joseph King of Dreams from 2000. They are vastly different films, and today I'm going to break down both movies, and I'm going to kind of compare and contrast and give my final thoughts towards the end of the video. Now, my final thoughts did record a couple days ago. I'm going to be using that footage so it doesn't go to waste, so I will look a little different. I will probably sound a little different, but like I said, trial and error. Let's get into this film, Prince of Egypt. So the film opens with the Hebrew slaves building Egypt from the ground up from scratch, and they are just in misery. They have been living their lives as slaves, working day and night non-stop in the heat, being whipped and pushed around like they're just pure property, like they're not humans. And during the sequence, we eventually end up passing through to a small Hebrew village, and we see Egyptian soldiers start to kind of raid and ransack this village. And this is all done because Pharaoh is fearful of a possible rebellion against the Hebrew slaves, and he's scared that the growing numbers they're going to. So he creates an executive order that all firstborn Hebrew boys must be terminated, just executed, gone, to prevent this said revolution, rebellion, however you want to say it, this uprising from the Hebrews. We then see a mother cradle a little baby in her hands, and this is her baby boy she's trying to protect. And she also has 2 other separate children. Their names are Miriam and Aaron. We'll get back to them later. But she takes her baby boy with her children, and they're able to bypass some of the guards. As they get past the guards, they're able to reach the front of a riverbank, and she puts her little baby boy into a wicker basket. She kisses him, sings him a lullaby, and sends him off his way. And during this, she, of course, prays to God, asking that he will be sent somewhere safe and to just be careful with this little precious cargo. As the wicker basket is drifting off into the river, Sister Miriam is walking by the basket, kind of watching over it to make sure that it's going to get to this destination safely. And this poor baby is being tossed like a football in the NFL. It is being kicked. It is being thrown. Just literally, God is teasing this poor basket, and he's scaring Miriam. Like, Miriam is just in shock and fear watching this little, baby boy be almost crushed by boats and the jaws of alligators. But eventually the basket does arrive at its location, which is the steps of the palace, and God's like, he's all good, G. The queen is with her own baby, and she sees the wicker basket approach her, and she takes off the lid and sees this little baby boy, and she's like, oh my god. So Miriam is at peace, finally knowing that her baby brother is safe, and just hopes that one day he will come back to them. The queen walks up with baby in her arms and gives her servants the dirtiest look ever, basically telling them with their eyes, keep your damn mouth shut. So Ramesses tries to get his mother attention, and she tells him, come now Ramesses, we're going to introduce Pharaoh to your new baby brother, Moses. And that's the opening of the film. Very gripping, very catching. It's amazing, wonderful. So I'm assuming probably around 20 years past, they're young adults now, and it's clear that both the brothers, Moses and Ramesses, has a very close, strong bond. They're chariot racing around Egypt, and they of course cause some havoc by accidentally destroying a temple that is in progress of being worked on. It causes a sand avalanche, which disturbs the peace of the high priestess Hotep-and-Hoi. They snitch on the princesses, and Pharaoh of course is disappointed, but mostly in Ramesses, because since he's the older son, Ramesses tells Pharaoh, whose name is Seti, I'm going to be kind of switching in between those two names, that one damaged temple will not undo years of tradition. Pharaoh claps back and says, but one weak link will break the chain of a mighty dynasty. He then sends Ramesses away, and Moses tries to take blame for what happened. He says it's his fault. Pharaoh tries to explain to Moses, like, Moses, you don't understand the burden that and the responsibility that's going to come with Ramesses when he has to take the crown and he'll be in charge of the throne. Moses says to Seti that he does care about your approval. He just needs the opportunity to show that he is responsible. Pharaoh takes note of this, and he sends Moses on his way too. They arrive late to the banquet that evening, and the queen comes up to them and she whispers to both of them as she hugs them, Ramesses, you just been named Prince Regent. You are now overseer of all the temples. Go over there and thank your father. Of course, everyone's elated about this. Moses tells Pharaoh, oh, like the high priestess should offer tribute. The tribute that the priests offer is a Midian girl named Zipporah, and she is not happy to be there. She is basically a prisoner. And when she tells the princes, I am not going to be given to anyone, especially to pampered palace brats, she then lashes out, and with the rope that's tied against her hand, she uses it kind of as a whip, and Moses grabs onto it and tells her to be still, and she's like, no, set me free, let me go. Moses says, girl, as you wish, and lets go of the rope, and she falls in a pond behind her, and Ramesses tells the house servant to take her up to Moses' chambers, basically saying, you could have her. And then he promotes Moses as royal chief architect. And Moses is, happy about this, but he does feel really bad about his treatment of Zipporah, so he goes back to his room to apologize and notices that she's gone, and she tied up the house servant and the dogs to keep him quiet. Moses chases after her, and he sees her about to get to the main entrance door out, but some guards are walking by, so he grabs their attention and says, there's a man tied up in my room, like, go look into it, which eventually diverges him away from Zipporah, and she's able to escape. And he sees her at a well trying to prepare herself for a long journey. At the well, there is a man and a woman, and the woman is shocked and surprised, but happy to see that Moses is there. And the man and the woman end up being Miriam and Aaron. And Moses is kind of like, okay, like, I don't know you like that. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, you care about her freedom. And he's like, girl, I don't care about that. And Miriam tells him, like, straight up, you're our brother. And Moses, of course, is like, clearly confused. He's just like, no, I'm not. Aaron tries to intervene and be like, I'm sorry, like, she's just tired. It's been a long day. It's not, like, we like the work. Don't get mad about that. We like the work, but she just needs to rest. And of course, Miriam is still objecting to this, and she's like, no, you're our brother. You're not a prince of Egypt. This, of course, pisses Moses off, and he's like, you are going to be punished. Aaron once again tries to separate the two of them and tries to physically drag Miriam away, and she's still shouting at Moses, saying that our mother risked her life to save yours. And Moses is like, save my life from who, girl? And she tells him, ask the man you call father. This just pisses off Moses more. He grabs Miriam and throws her down, saying that she's going to regret this night. And of course, Miriam is on the ground and she's very upset. She's feeling a little broken, but she starts to sing the lullaby that their mother sang to Moses the day that she sent him off to the river. And Moses has a Winter Soldier moment because he starts to reflect on what happened. He's kind of in shock and stands there, but eventually he runs back home to the palace. And once back at the palace, he kind of just is in denial of everything Miriam said. He is very much like, I am the Prince of Egypt. Like, everything she said is just not true. This is my life. This is my home. This is my family. And during this, he must have just popped all the air out of his lungs because he slumped down and just took a nap so quickly. He knocked out fast. As he's sleeping, he has a very vivid dream about the day that the infanticide took place, and he sees from afar the village being taken over. He sees the soldiers coming in, and he sees his mother placing him in the basket to take him to safety. And he gets really emotional about it, and he just jolts awake. So he goes down to a dark room, like a dark area in the palace, where I guess they have all the murals of the history painted alongside the walls. And of course he finds the mural of the day of the infanticide, and he's heartbroken and he's in shock because he realizes what Miriam was telling him was true. Seti comes up to him and he tries to console Moses, and Moses is just like, please tell me you didn't do this. Seti hugs him and he just says, oh Moses, they were only slaves. And Moses backs up in horror with this. He just cannot believe this, but he finally got the answers that he needed. The next morning, he's sitting at the river where he was found, and the queen approaches him, and he's just like, why did you choose me? And the queen just tells him, like, we didn't. The gods did. When the gods send you a blessing, you don't ask why it's sent. Like, you're our son and we love you. A while later, Moses catches up with Ramses, who's now trying to oversee the temples and build a bigger, grander Egypt. He then hears the cries of an old man coming from afar who's being whipped mercilessly by a guard, and he just cannot take it anymore. So he runs up, he's shouting, leave that man alone. And Ramses is taken back a little bit. He's confused. He's just like, Moses? Moses eventually goes to the spot where all of this is happening, and he accidentally does push the guard over to his death. And shocked by this, not realizing what he just did, can't really process it, he is like, I can no longer do this. I can't be here anymore. He runs away from Egypt. And his brother tries to stop him and catches up to him, but is unsuccessful. Moses does tell him, go ask the man I once called father, so he could explain what happens. They both have a very sorrowful goodbye, and Moses just runs into the desert, no destination, just he wants to get far away from Egypt. A little bit time just passed, and Moses is able to hold on to a camel satchel of water that takes him to a well. And once he's there, he's parched, he's thirsty, he is dry as hell, and he notices some ruffians trying to attack a group of three small girls. To get them away from the girls, he shoos the guys' camels away, and this of course ends up diverging them. They ended up leaving them alone. And after, Moses does fall into the well because he's so weak, and the three girls try to help him up, of course. So they're pulling on this rope to helping him up, and Zipporah shows up, and she's like, girls, what are you doing? And these three girls are her sisters, and they tell her, well, we're trying to get the funny man out of the well. And she's like, girl, funny man out of the well? Like, I never heard that one before. And they hear Moses struggle to get up, so she's like, oh, like, hold on, I'm gonna help you get up. Once he reaches the surface, she's like, nah, this isn't it. And she drops his ass back to the bottom, and, you know, she's proud of herself, and she leaves. And one of the girls comments, and that's why Papa says she's never gonna get married. At the village, Moses cleans up and he is able to join everyone for a feast. He does meet the chief high priestess of the village, who happens to be Zipporah's father, and he ends up throwing him a feast in celebrating his honor of help saving his daughters. And Moses doesn't feel deserving of this. He's kind of like, I never did anything in my life worth honoring. And of course the chief is like, well, you saved my daughters from thugs, and you saved my other daughter from the clutches of Egypt. Like, you don't think that's anything? And as time goes on, Moses lives in this village. He grows to be part of the community. He becomes a shepherd. He's able to grow a better bond with Zipporah, which eventually leads to them getting married. And we just see Moses prosper and have a very peaceful life from what he used to believe was a better life. So I'm assuming probably around 20 years have passed, again, a long time, and Moses is now a shepherd. One morning he goes to tend the sheep, and he notices a baby sheep kind of run off into the canyon. So he's like, girl, it's too early for this, but I'm gonna go get it. I'm gonna go find that sheep. And as he's trying to find the sheep, he passes by a cavern that's open with a burning bush. And it's not really like a typical fire. It's kind of like the flames are very like clear, misty, like bluish white kind of. And as he puts his hand and staff in there, he doesn't the fire doesn't catch on, it doesn't burn him or anything. And this fire ends up introducing itself as the Hebrew God. And he tells Moses, I've heard my people cry for years, and I finally want to set them free, and you're going to help me do that. You're going to go to Egypt and you're going to free your people. Moses is a little apprehensive about this. He's kind of like, I don't know if I'm the right person to do this. And God, it gets a little frustrated, and he's like, girl, you're going to do this. Get your shoes on and head out there. And then God reassures him, look, Pharaoh's not going to listen to you, but I'm going to be there with you the whole entire time. I'm going to be by your side, and I will show all of Egypt my wonders. After this experience, Moses is deeply moved. He never had a spiritual experience like this, and he is committed to doing this task now. So he runs to Zipporah, and he tells her what's going down, like, hey, God talked to me. And she believes him, and she supports him, and she's like, okay, I'm going to go with you. So they both pack up, and they go all the way back to Egypt to free the Hebrew slaves. Once Moses gets there, he sees that it is far worse than what it used to be. There's slaves of all ages there. There's from children to elderly. Once he reaches the palace, there's like a grand party happening, and all the Egyptians there in attendance are just looking at him like he's a dirty rag that the wind just blew in. And Pharaoh eventually realized that it's Moses, his brother, and he thought that he was dead. So of course he's excited, he's elated to finally have his brother back, and he thinks that everything's gonna go back to normal. But Moses is kind of like, nah, like it's not like that. You know I'm Hebrew, and the God of the Hebrews came to me to tell you, he commands you to let his people go. Ramses is kind of like taken aback by this, because the God that Moses speaks of, the Egyptians don't believe in. They have their own set list of deities. So Ramses is kind of like, okay, like whatever you say, I'll go along, because he kind of thinks Moses is a little like cuckoo at the moment. So he tells his high priestess Hotep Hoi, who are still there, to kind of give the snake charmer, as he calls him, our answer, because as a demonstration of what a god's powers is, Moses turns his staff into a king cobra. So that's why he calls him a snake charmer. He thinks he's just full of tricks and magic. So Hotep and Hoi kind of try to humble him, be like, hey, you're back on royal Egyptian ground. You need to cool down. Whatever you're going on about, like, you're playing with the big boys type of thing. That's what the song is. You're playing with the big boys. After the sequence, Ramesses pulls Moses aside to talk to him by himself, and he's kind of saying like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, what is this about? And Moses tries his best to really get through Ramesses and be like, hey, what you're doing, you're building the city off the back of slaves, and that's not okay. And Ramesses, of course, just like his father, only sees them as what it is, just slaves. And he isn't really budging at what Moses is telling him. Moses, of course, is disheartened by this, and he gives him back the ring that his brother gave him when he appointed him as royal chief architect many years ago. And it's like a gold and blue stone ring. Ramesses is upset by this, of course, but he's like, fine, you know what? I don't know who this God is, and neither am I letting your people go. Tell your people that their workload has been doubled, all thanks to your God, or is it thanks to you? Moses' brother Aaron is like, when did God start caring about us? And when did you even start caring about us, Moses, enough to try to free us? And Miriam kind of gets in between them and tries to tell Moses, like, you know, I've been a slave all my life, but God is finally answering my prayers finally to let us go. And this gives Moses some reassurance and hope. He sees his brother on a boat in the river with his son. Ramses does have a son. And Moses still shouts at him to let his people go. Ramses, of course, is like, girl, you're still on that? Like, no, I ain't doing that. So Moses, of course, keeps shouting it. And Ramses is like, enough. He has his guards sent to capture Moses. And as they start to approach Moses, God talks to him, and he tells him to put his staff in the water. Moses does, and all but around him is blood. So there's a very small circle, like very close to him, that's just clear water. Everything else is blood. Ramses doesn't understand what's going on, so he asks Hotep and Hoi to explain to him what's going on. And even they're confused, but they come up with they put like a red powder in the water to mimic the blood appearing in the water. So they're trying to be like, oh, well, the trick he did, we just did. So it's nothing but magic. Once again, Ramesses just doesn't want to listen to Moses, and he carries on. And after this, Aaron tells Moses, like, see, that didn't do anything because Pharaoh still has power over our lives. And Moses is like, yeah, unfortunately he does, but he cannot take away your faith, and he doesn't have your hope. So those things like are still yours, and don't worry, as long as you believe in God, Egypt will see all of his wonders. And dives into the sequence when all of the 10 plagues starts to happen. So all of these plagues are just ravaging through Egypt, and Moses and Ramesses are kind of going back with each other during an incredible song, and it's kind of like, it's a duet called The Plagues, and Moses is just saying like, hey, I didn't want this. I really wish that God chose someone else to be your foe and not me, but, since this is my purpose, this is my mission, like, you need to let my people go, and all this suffering is because of your stubbornness and your pride. But Ramses is still putting his foot down. He's very much like, I ain't letting your people go. I can't believe that you were once my brother, and like you hate me this much to cause all this devastation, not realizing that it's his own, fault that this is happening. And at the very end, the last of the plague, of course, is death of the firstborn. And God tells Moses, take a lamb, and with its blood, put it on all of the doors, and when the plague comes, and I see the blood on your door, it shall not enter. Well, unfortunately, none of the Egyptians got this memo. It was mostly just for the Hebrew slaves, so all of them did what they were supposed to do, but the Egyptians, the plague went all through Egypt and took the lives of the firstborns. And this does unfortunately include Ramses' only child, and he's devastated. And he eventually, after this, tells Moses, like, you know what? You and your people have my permission to go. And as Moses tries to comfort Ramses, he is like, girl, don't touch me. Get out before I change my mind. Moses tells his family and all of the slaves that, hey, pack up, we're ready to go, let's leave. So they all get whatever they can, and they're free. Of course, they're all joyous. They're finally hopeful for once in their life that they're finally going to the promised land. So after some time traveling, they pull up to the shore of the Red Sea, and they're taking a little breather. And in the distance, there is a horn, a signal that kind of alerts them. Moses looks up and he sees Ramses and all of his men, the remaining guards there on chariots, riding down to kill them, to take no prisoners. And just before they are at that halfway point, a firestorm is sent down from the sky by God to separate Ramses and his men away from Moses and the Hebrews. Moses is confused. He doesn't know what the next step is. And God tells him, take the staff in your hand once again. And Moses slams it hard on the ground, which divides the Red Sea. This gives them safe passage to the other side away from Ramses and his men. So they all start to walk, and they're almost at the halfway point. They could see the light of day. The finish line is right there. And just before everyone could start to really cross, the firestorm lets up, and this allows Ramses and his men to kind of catch up with them. Well, since it's the ocean floor and it's really rocky and bumpy, their chariots and horses, like everything kind of like, the carts kind of burst and get destroyed. But this doesn't stop Ramesses. He's still in hard killed mode, and he tells all his men, like, don't just stand there, like, kill them all. I don't want no prisoners. All the Hebrews are able to get to the other side of the shore, and Moses looks up and he sees the sea start to collapse on itself, which start to wash away Ramses and the remainder of his guards, while the rest of his people are able to make it to the other side of the sea safely. They are finally free. They are finally happy. They're rejoicing. They are hugging each other. There's just so much relief in the air. But Moses, of course, feels a little bit of sorrow as he walks back to the shore, and he looks out, and we see a glimpse of where Ramses is at. He's kind of sitting along a pile of rocks, just shouting Moses' name over and over again. So everyone's finally free. Moses did the damn thing, and he freed his people, and as they're starting to build their own cities, their own communities, Moses does create the 10 Commandments. And that is the end of Prince of Egypt 1998. I can't praise this movie enough. I will glaze it as the donut it is. And now I'm going to be discussing and breaking down Joseph King of Dreams. Now, I have a lot of gripes about this movie. I want to make it clear, I don't hate this movie, but there's so much wasted potential. Now, let's get into Joseph King of Dreams. The film opens with Judah, one of the oldest sons out of 11 brothers, and his father Jacob. I cannot stand Jacob. I hate Jacob with a passion. But anyways, his father Jacob, and they're both waiting for the arrival of the youngest baby brother to be born. Their birth mother did pass away, so Jacob remarried a woman named Rachel, and Rachel was thought to be infertile. So the fact that she is about to give birth to a baby is, beyond Jacob's wildest dreams. He sees this as the miracle child. The baby's born, and the baby's name is Joseph, and automatically Jacob starts to divide and separate his brothers from Joseph. The brothers are excited that they finally have like a new baby brother that they could teach new stuff to, but Jacob is automatically shuts that down. He's like, I'm gonna teach him what I know. He always has Joseph study and doesn't do any hard labor that his other brothers do. His other brothers take care of the herd, they take care of the land, the family, everything. And Joseph mostly just learns how to read and write and whatever else his father wants to teach him. And there are times that Joseph does try to connect with his brothers, but Jacob just has to get in the way and separate them from that. As Joseph gets older, his mother creates him a very vibrant coat that is purple and kind of pinkish, ombre-ish, and it has gold threading. And her and Jacob give Joseph this gift. And of course, this kind of irritates the brothers because they don't get anything. They don't feel as prioritized or special the way that Joseph does. So they start to get very resentful of him pretty quickly. One night, Joseph has a dream about a pack of wolves attacking the herd's ram, and he wakes up, and scared in pure terror, and the brothers scoff it off. They're just like, it's just a dream, whatever. And Jacob, of course, they're all wakened from this, so Jacob sends them to do the labor very early in the morning, and this just pisses him off. Joseph wants to spend some time with his brothers, though, so he tries to run off with them, but Jacob stops him. He's like, hey, you need to do your studies. And Joseph's like, well, I want to go be with them. Like, I want to do what they want to do. And Jacob's like, no, that's not what you're meant for. You're meant for more. So you need to study. And Rachel kind of gets in the middle. It's like, hey, let him have a day off. Let him go be with his brothers. And Jacob's a little, reluctant. But he's like, okay, fine. Go be with your brothers. So Joseph eventually finds them and he catches up with them. And, of course, they have nothing in common with them. They're just kind of like, why are you here? You're not even here to work. And Joseph's like, well, I want to help you guys. What can I do? Judah tells them, do you mind watching the herd for us for a little bit? We'll be right back. And Joseph's like, yeah, of course I'll help. Joseph is sitting there and he's kind of just wondering, where did everyone go? Joseph looks past some bushes and he sees that his brothers are playing in the river without him. And of course this upsets Joseph because he wants to help his brothers, but he also wants to spend time with them. And as Joseph's sitting there disappointed, he sees a little baby sheep run into the wheat field and he gives chase. And as he's giving chase, he noticed a pack of wolves trying to attack this little sheep. And he tries to save it. During this, Jacob is able to intervene and protect Joseph from the pack of wolves. And he asks him, where the hell are your brothers at? They should be here. And the brothers match up coming up and they're like, hey, sorry, what happened? Jacob is scolding them saying, well, you guys are his brothers. You should be protecting him. During all that tension happening, Joseph notices the ram is dead. And this meaning that his dream was a genuine premonition that came true. And the brothers are like, well, this is just coincidence. These things happen. That night, Joseph has another vivid dream, but this time it includes his brothers, and Joseph is in the middle, and all of his brothers bow down to him. The next morning, he wakes up, and his mother asks how he's doing. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I just had another weird dream. And the brothers kind of heckle him a little bit, and hey, where was your dream? Dream boy, what was it? And he tells them, well, in this dream, you all bow down to me. And this pisses off all the brothers because in a way they see Judah as the superior sibling. They see him as the better brother. He is the leader. He takes care of everything. He's in charge. He's more important than Joseph in their eyes. And Jacob tells them, look, we can't ignore these dreams. These are signs. We need to be aware of them. Joseph's upset and he walks off, and his mother catches up with him and she says, hey, those are your brothers. You need to respect them. You need to appreciate them. You need to love them. All of this is just going to get us nowhere. We are family regardless. So after this interaction, Joseph's like, yeah, you're right, I'm gonna go find them. So Joseph runs after his brothers. They're all in the canyon and they're kind of talking bad about Joseph, being like, oh, like, what are we gonna do about him? And one of the brothers actually catches Joseph. They're so irritated and over Joseph, and Joseph's still trying to, in a way, connect with them and apologize. And Simeon, one of the brothers, takes Joseph's coat and he puts it on him, and he's kind of like parading around and trying to be a parody of Joseph and make fun of him, and he ends up ripping the coat, and this upsets Joseph, but they're all pushing him around, treating him like, you know, just bullying him, and they kind of inadvertently push him off into like this hole in the ground. And once he falls in, they throw his coat and they just kind of leave, and he sees a rope fall down from the top of the hole, and he climbs up and he's like, oh, like, I knew you guys would come back for me. At the top, it is 3 men he is not aware of, and they're talking about how scrawny he is and how skinny he is. His hands look too soft. He looks like he never worked a day in his life. And one of them comments, well, that's gonna change. He sees his brothers kind of come out of like a corner, and he runs to them and he's like, oh, see, like, you know, I knew my brothers would come back for me. Well, one of the men tosses a little bag of 20 pieces of silver to Judah and says, as promised, and it becomes clear that Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers out of jealousy and spite and the hate that they had for him because of the way he was treated by his parents. And Joseph could be arrogant at times, but for the most part, he really did want to have that bond with his brothers. It just never happened. And then Joseph is then taken off to be sold at a trade market in Egypt. He catches the eye of Lord Potiphar, and he's kind of like a second hand to the Pharaoh. But for the remainder of the video, I'm going to call him Lord P. He decides to buy Joseph as a slave for the house cleaning. Once he gets to the palace, he has his hair chopped off, he's shaven, he's clean. As Joseph is cleaning the entire courtyard, he sees visions of his brother in the puddles of water that he's cleaning, and he gets really pissed off by this, so he's just scrubbing vigorously. Lord P and his wife approach him, and they're kind of amazed by all the hard work that Joseph has done, and they're like talking to themselves, saying like, oh, well, he's a hard worker, we could do a lot more with him. And it becomes clear that the queen has a little bit of a hidden motive for this, but we'll get back to it later. One day, as Lord P is trying to purchase a stallion from a merchant, he puts the payment on a scale, but the scale is a little off, and Lord P thought he brought all the correct amount of coins, but the merchant's like, nah, cough it up. So Pharaoh adds a little bit more change to the scale, and it eventually balances, and before the final purchase can be made, Joseph checks out the scale and he sees it's a little tempered with, and the slightest amount of weight will offset the scales. Lord P is amazed by Joseph's education, and he personally takes him under his wing, and he has him take on a lot more responsibility around the palace. Especially when it comes to the vineyards, Joseph notices that all of the grapevines are just dying because the crows are pecking and eating the grapes. Joseph comes up with a brilliant plan to make a scarecrow to scare off the crows, and this helps the vineyards flourish, and of course Lord P is very impressed by all his hard work that he's doing. One night, as Joseph is painting a mural on the palace wall, the queen kind of comes up behind him and scares him a little bit. The queen approaches Joseph, and it's clear she's trying to seduce him, and he's not having it. He's telling her no, that he's loyal to his master, and that he does not want to do this. And she's starting to get really irritated and agitated, telling him, everything you have is because of me. And as Joseph is trying to escape her grasp, she rips a piece of his shirt and screams. The guards eventually catch Joseph and throw him in front of Lord P, and he's telling them very adamantly, I didn't do anything, I would never betray your trust, master. And Lord P is just not believing it. He's calling him a liar, telling him, the way I've treated you, I've never treated any other slave that way. And as he pulls back the curtain, he shows his wife, the queen, crying, and accused Joseph of rape. I can't say the R word. But Lord P, of course, is just not believing him, and he sentences Joseph to death. As he's starting to be taken away, the queen stops and looks at Lord P and tells him, don't do this, and kind of gives him that look that she lied. And Lord P realizes that, oh, Joseph is innocent. But in order to protect his reputation, he of course sends Joseph off to jail anyway. Joseph is then thrown into a cell, and he has 2 other cellmates. One is a cupbearer and the other is a baker. The reasons why they're in the jail is unknown, but they're both there and they're talking about these vivid dreams they've been having. Joseph interrupts him and says, "Hey, I can help interpret those dreams if you want." He tells Joseph that he's been having a dream of these 3 grapevines that had been dying, but because of his tears, he was able to bring them back to life. And with those grapes from the vine, he is able to make a wine and gives it to Pharaoh. Joseph tells him that, "Oh, like, this is a good dream. This means that in 3 days you will be freed." The baker says, "Cap, that's not true. Let me tell you my dream." He explains that his dream is about him carrying 3 bread baskets and they all fall, and a murderer of crows comes onto him and starts pecking and attacking him. Joseph tells him this is not a good dream. Unfortunately, it means that in 3 days he will be executed. And of course, the baker's not having it. He doesn't believe it, and he tells the cupbearer, like, to ignore him, like, let's just continue on with our day. Well, the 3 days pass, and the cupbearer, of course, is taken back to Pharaoh to resume his work while the baker is executed. The baker, of course, is in shock, but he's telling him, like, you knew this would happen. Like, that's not a gift, that's a curse. Which is kind of true, I believe it. Joseph begs the cupbearer that once he gets to Pharaoh to please remind him that he has a gift of interpreting dreams. Unfortunately, the cupbearer does forget to share this information, and Joseph is still in jail. And one night, as Asenath is trying to sneak him food, it falls from the jail ceiling and it ends up popping on the floor. Remy and his gang just hop onto that and devour it in like 2 seconds, leaving Joseph with nothing. And of course, Joseph is in such despair. He starts yelling at God, saying, like, why would you do this? Like, all the kindness you give, you take away, and my dreams are just lies. As Joseph is trying to climb to the very top of the jail cell, he falls to the floor and he knocks himself out. The next morning, he wakes up and he notices a small dead tree and decides to help it give it life again. He takes care of it, and in the process of doing so, he finds meaning, he finds purpose just from taking care of this little tree. And because of this also, he's able to find that trust and love that he has for God again. And he tells himself, you know, whatever plan you have, like, I'm going to listen to it. A couple years pass, and Joseph has finally helped this little tree grow completely straight where it doesn't need a stick to support. And Lord P comes down to the cell and asks for Joseph's help to see the Pharaoh. Apparently, Pharaoh's been having some really weird dreams that no one can interpret, and eventually the cupbearer remembered that Joseph can interpret dreams, so he let Pharaoh know about this information, and Pharaoh, of course, wants to see Joseph. When Lord P sees Joseph again, they just reconcile real quickly. Joseph tells him that he forgives him, and Lord P apologizes because he always knew that he was innocent. But you know, they get up to see Pharaoh, and as Pharaoh's getting ready, he tells Joseph, I've been having these crazy dreams consistently, and no one can interpret them, so you better help me interpret this. Joseph asks what the dreams are, and Pharaoh explains that there are 7 healthy, prosperous cows that are devoured by 7 sickly cows, and he doesn't understand why. Joseph tells him, well, this means that there's going to be 7 years of flourishing and harvesting and farming and everything in all of Egypt for 7 years. But unfortunately, right after those 7 years, those 7 good years, there will be 7 years of famine and devastation and just dryness all over Egypt. So Joseph proposes a plan and says, I propose that what we do is take 1/3 of what we harvest and store it away somewhere. That way, when those 7 years of devastation come, we're able to save Egypt from mass starvation because we have set so much aside. Pharaoh likes this idea, and he's like, okay, I'll roll with it. And he eventually makes Joseph his advisor, and he also gives him a new name, Zapnath, which of course is his new identity, what he goes by now. During those 7 years, Egypt flourishes. They're able to harvest, they're able to farm as much as they can. They store a lot of the wheat and the grains away for the Egyptian citizens. And during this time also, Joseph marries Asenath, and he has 2 beautiful children with her. So Joseph's life really does prosper in all this time from all the pain and heartache he went through. After so many years of going through so much struggle, Joseph's life really did prosper. He had so many blessings. He has a family. He has a high-ranking status and job now. He is actually doing all he can to help all of Egypt and its citizens. It's still those 7 years of devastation, so they are still rationing out a lot of the crops and the wheats, the grains, everything they have. One day, as he's helping, you know, sort out and ration out food to the citizens, there's like huge lines of them. He sees all 11 of his brothers there, and he is shell-shocked. He goes to a corner and tries to compose himself, and he just like, oh my god. So once the brothers come up in line, he tells them that they're not going to get anything, and he accuses them of trying to steal because they're not even Egyptian citizens. They claim that they are bringing food back, extra food, for their father and their younger brother. Well, Joseph doesn't believe this, so he says, okay, if you bring me your younger brother, you'll get all the grain you want. But until then, I'm going to have one of your brothers as prisoner. And they take Simeon as a prisoner. And of course the brothers don't realize that this is Joseph. They think this is Lord Zapneth. So they're like, okay, like, Your Majesty, like, we apologize. We're going to go produce our younger brother. We'll bring him back here. And Asenath kind of comes up to him, and she's confused by his earlier actions, and she's like, hey, like, you okay? And that's when he confesses to her, like, no, those are my brothers. They sold me into slavery. And she, of course, she hugs him. She's sympathetic, and she apologizes. But she also tells him, like, what you're doing is not right. Like, that's not the correct way to go about things. The brothers finally return and produce the youngest brother, Benjamin. And he is a spitting image of Joseph. He looks exactly like him before he left and everything. Joseph comes up to Benjamin. He kind of interrogates him, asks him a bunch of questions about what happened to the original younger brother. Joseph does keep his word, and he does release Simeon after they show up with the youngest brother. But he stops him in his tracks and says, hey, you guys had a long journey. How about you guys have something to eat? You know, let's have a feast. And they of course take this as a kind gesture, but Joseph is plotting. He is still super petty and still angry about what they did. He wants to break his brothers regardless. So he frames Benjamin as stealing one of his gold chalices and hides it in his wheat bag, so when he opens it up, it just falls out, and he tells the guards to take Benjamin away as prisoner. All the brothers then volunteer as tribute, basically, and say, no, take me instead. They all say, take me instead, don't take him. And Joseph's kind of taken aback by this, like, what? Like, you would give up your life for a half-brother? And they're like, yeah, of course. And that's when Judah explains that many years ago, we sold our youngest half-brother into slavery because we were so jealous of him. And ever since that day, we truly regret it. And we saw the heartache that it was upon our family, especially our father. And we cannot go back without our younger brother. So, yes, if we have the chance to save our younger brother, we will. And of course, Joseph is moved by this, and finally he comes to terms with what happened, and he gets down on his knees and he goes to Judah. He takes off the crown that he has, and he says, it's me, I'm Joseph, and I forgive you guys. And they're all in shock because they thought he was genuinely dead. But they reconcile, they forgive each other, they're able to move on from this. And Joseph tells them, bring your families, like, you all can live here. We could all be happy. So of course they do. They all bring their families. They also bring Jacob, who is still alive. He's still alive. He's still there. Him and Joseph are able to reconcile as well. And Jacob tells him that this is a miracle. I really do wish your mother was here to see this. And yeah, they all live happily ever after in Egypt. And of course this is a prequel to Prince of Egypt, so they're not aware of what the descendants there are gonna have to deal with, unfortunately. But yeah, that's Joseph King of Dreams from 2000. Those are the two stories of the films. I'm sorry if I missed some details. Maybe it was a little bit clunky here and there. But like I said, this is my 5th time filming this. I'm so tired. I started this when the sun was out. It is nighttime. Well, this has been like a whole week process, but you know, if this video is not up to par, I apologize, and hopefully the next one will be a lot better. I do have this microphone, but I need to try to find a specific setup for it, because I can use it on the camera, and I tried earlier but it didn't work. So I have to figure that out. So at least I had this. Hopefully you could kind of hear a little bit. I don't know how good it works with Canyon. I know with this one, this little camera, it works better. So the next part is the outro of the video. It's my comparing, contrasting, and, you know, talking about both films. This is footage from a couple days ago, and I don't want it to go to waste. I want to use it, and I feel like during that video I was able to say everything I wanted to say. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully you stay to hear everything else. But yeah, that's at least the breakdowns for the videos, and I am going to sleep, at least for right now, and then I'll edit all this and I'll edit that too into it. And yeah, I highly recommend you guys watch this as a double feature for sure. My cat's sniffing my purse. He's trying to take my money. Okay, now that I broke down those two movies for you, I kind of want to get into why I appreciate more one than the other, and why I think the other one really did falter, and I feel like it could have been so much more. And yeah, it's kind of crazy that these movies are somewhat connected but just so different, especially in the tones. The first thing I want to get out of the way is the score. Now, Hans Zimmer did the score for Prince of Egypt, and it is fantastic. It is truly masterclass, and I feel like every song was crafted beautifully and very specifically for the scenes that they're supposed to be in. I think what really helps elevate it is the fact that these are all sung by the characters in specific moments of the movie, and I really feel like that helps with the raw emotion of the characters and helps describe what they're feeling and experiencing during these songs that they're singing. And that's mostly all I really have to say about Prince of Egypt's score. I think it's beautifully done. Now, the score of Joseph, King of Dreams is done by Daniel Pelfrey. And I think the song that was highlighted the most, that I actually remember the most, is You Know Better Than I. And this song was sung during the sequence of when Joseph was stuck in the jail cell. The first two songs of the film is Miracle Child and Bloom. And they're sang by the ensemble of the characters in the beginning. Miracle Child, the father, Jacob, the mom, and then the brother, and then Joseph and some of the brothers as well. And Bloom is sung by his mother, and there's kind of a reprise version from Asenath during, like, towards the end of the film. But after that, the songs are mostly sung kind of like Phil Collins style, where it's mostly background vocals and you're kind of just watching the scene play out. No one's really like talking too much. They're kind of just like doing their actions while the music's playing. And I don't like that for this film. Whereas Joseph, King of Dreams is kind of just, for one, not memorable. These songs are not good, unfortunately. And I think it is such a letdown, because that's what really helped Prince of Egypt shine, was the characters singing their own songs. And I feel like especially when the scene where Joseph is stuck in the jail cell, he really vocally and like should have been animated to be singing his own song. I feel like it would have made it a lot more impactful, a lot more emotional as well. And I also believe the tones of the movies kind of hinder it a little bit as well, because Joseph, King of Dreams is not as dark as Prince of Egypt, so the songs come off a little bit more cheery. And it's so hard for me because I'm making this video based on like my opinions, my views of it, while of course everyone else is going to have their own interpretation, thoughts, or whatever else it comes to when they view the movie themselves. And I just think that the music for the film just was not good. And when you have a musical with songs that just no one really remembers or cares for, that's a problem. This movie probably would have been so much better if it didn't have music, in my opinion, because of just how forgetful it was. Now, since I mentioned the tone of the films, there are two very, very different tones of these films, okay? You have Prince of Egypt, very darker in animation and very darker in scale and story, where Joseph, King of Dreams is very more lighter in color in their animation and, storytelling. Prince of Egypt is from the Book of Exodus, and the movie isn't from note to note from the story of the original source material. It was made more for theatrical release, which, I understand. And I think that even though it wasn't specifically done from note to note, I think they did a wonderful and fabulous job, because it still respected the source material. Joseph, King of Dreams is from the Book of Genesis. It was written to be much more closer to the source material, the story of Joseph, and that's fine. I feel like that's okay. But I think they could have also, they could have emphasized it a little bit more. They could have went more in depth with it. And I think that you could still respect the source material. And, if you want to add like a couple things here and there to help progress the story, not hinder it or anything like that, then yeah, that's fine. If you can make it work, make it impactful, I totally agree with that. But the fact that this film just, like I said, it was an hour, with credits, it's like an hour and 13 minutes to be precise. And it is very short. And there was a lot that was going on, but nothing at the same time. it felt like they only had an hour to really work with, and because of that hour, I feel like there was so many missed opportunities. Like I said, especially with the tone, this is a pretty dark story. You have a man who was sold into slavery by his brothers. Even though they're half brothers, that's still his brothers. And for him to be put through so much years of just having to do a lot of hard work and really reconnect with his faith, because he's just been pushed to the brink of what's the point. That's, that's very heavy stuff, and I feel like this movie really could have went there with it. Because while the end is technically like, a happy ending, the majority of the story is very tragic. Not just for Joseph, but for his family, for his brothers. The brothers that feel like they just didn't really have the love and support from his parents like the way Joseph did. I feel like that really could have made such, you're gonna get tired of hearing this word, impact for this film. Lastly, I'm gonna go into what I think really helped Prince of Egypt shine and kind of hindered Joseph a little bit, and that's the connections. The characters and their bond and what they were experiencing, going through, really helped the story in Prince of Egypt, because we had that time to grow with them and to really see how much they thought of each other and cared about each other. Even when it came to Moses and Ramesses, they of course had the strongest connection in the films, and that bond was just so cut deep. And I think when it even came to Joseph's other siblings, Miriam and Aaron, even though they didn't have the most screen time, the screen time that they had was still very impactful, and we still cared about these characters. Even from Pharaoh's wife, I think her character was still very impactful for the story. The writers did an incredible job with Prince of Egypt. I feel like we cared about each character, whether it was dislike or we wanted to root for them. We wanted, even though we know the outcome of the story, we wanted these brothers to just be together, to reconnect, to not have to deal with the paths that they took and the consequences of those paths. And even that was an hour-and-a-half movie. And even with the extra 30 minutes, they still wrote the characters to such a degree that we felt something, that they felt something for each other, and we felt that. I think it's so important to highlight that brotherly bond from that movie, because it was clearly missing in Joseph King of Dreams. There was literally no thought or attention that was truly brought to that connection of the brothers. We did not care about the brothers. We kind of feel like, pity or sympathy a little bit, but we really didn't see how much of the impact it really was between Joseph and his brothers. We knew that they didn't like him, that they were jealous of him, but I feel like it would have been so much better if we saw a mix of the good and the bad between them. So it could be more like, hey, it looked like they were doing okay, it looked like they were going to get better. And what I mean by that is, mostly throughout the whole film, we just saw the brothers getting pissed at Joseph. Joseph kind of just, being a little bit too much in his high horse, and probably like one scene when they were like playing with the ball back and forth together, that they were bonding. There really wasn't any moments of true bond between them. And even when they sold them into slavery, it was just kind of like, okay. There wasn't any emotional impact from that. It didn't feel like, damn, like, why do they have to be fighting? Why does this have to be the only solution? And it's a short film, but you still could have made that more full of sorrow, and just like, damn, hit harder. I feel like maybe the brothers could have been a little bit better. Like I said, I feel like they were showing more of the negative and like cons of it, rather than the actual like pros and love between this family. Like I said, for Prince of Egypt, you could still be close to the source material and respect it, but you can also, if you need to tweak a little thing here and there to make it more impactful, to really highlight and show the relationship, yeah, I feel like you really should do so. I really feel like in order for this movie to have worked, you really needed to have had those brothers truly have a deeper bond than what they did. Because even when it came to the climax of the film, when Joseph is kind of, messing with them and trying to be like, hey, I'm gonna ruin your family again by taking them away, you're still kind of just like, okay, like, you don't really feel anything. The brothers might feel very remorseful, but at the same time, you don't really know, because they're kind of just telling you, they're in the spot like, oh yeah, like, we regret what we did, but I feel like you don't really feel that regret. They're kind of just there. Like I said, this is my own personal feelings and like my thoughts about it. Maybe you see it a different way. Maybe you think that after watching these two and kind of comparing it and contrasting, that when it comes to certain films, especially when it comes to siblings, and the film is focused on those siblings and their rivalry, you need to show the audience that these brothers care about each other in some way, because if they don't, there really is no impact. You don't care about them because they don't care about each other. And I think that's a shame, because one film did very good at it. It's superior to it, of course. And you had another one that just was kind of like, well, they're brothers, they're jealous, they got rid of him, and it is what it is.